From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, February 5th, 2024. We'll start off looking at the satellite picture here. We'll put it into motion, and as we do so, we see a couple of storm systems lifting into the region, one of which is lifting in now, bringing some snow to portions of the, central Alberta into northern Alberta, portions of central and southern Saskatchewan, seeing a light wintry mix. And then we've got another disturbance parked over the Pacific right now, an atmospheric river event across portions of California, heavy mountain snow here from British Columbia into Washington and Oregon, and we'll continue to see corridors of snowfall across the prairie as we head through the next 5 to 7 days. A look at the radar here Monday morning. Again, the heaviest precipitation between Edmonton and Grand Prairie. Very light, kind of wintry mix as you make your way across portions of central, southeastern Saskatchewan down into southern portions of Manitoba. And as we look at those temperatures, cold air wrapping around the backside of our area of low pressure, warm air lifting in advance of that, our warm front here, that cold front in the area of greatest lift, and shower activity kind of on the north side of that storm track. Again, storms lifting into the prairie. That is how we get more in the way of impactful precipitation versus those storms that dive out of the northwest. Now, over the last couple of days, we've seen precipitation again returning to the prairie after a dry couple of weeks across the region with an anomalous ridge of high pressure. Starting to see that break down, troughing moving into the region. Again, we'll see corridors of precipitation as we head through the next 5 to 7 days. A look at that broadly here, the next 7 from the European ensemble model. A lot of this here falling right now, and then this is a corridor of snow we expect to see falling across portions of the U.S.-Canada border as we get into mid and late parts of the week into the weekend. A look at the total snowfall forecast verbatim from the European model. It won't happen exactly like this, but this gives you an idea of what we're looking at here. Anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of snow across portions of southern Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba with a storm system that comes here kind of in the days 4 to 7 time frame. Other areas likely to see some flurry activity, but maybe not so much in the way of significant accumulation. This is certainly not a pivot toward a pattern that's going to be delivering heavy, quarters of snow to the entire prairie. Just sort of ticking up the frequency and coverage of precipitation just ever so slightly. So here's the ridge of high pressure that has been parked over Canada for the last 7+ days. This is the disturbance to the west, the trough that is bringing the active weather. You can see the very kind of subtle disturbance, the first one kind of making its way in right here. That's the one that's got the snow on the north side of it. And then we'll see additional disturbances coming around the base of that trough, lifting into the prairie as we head through the next 5 to 7 days, further breaking down this ridge of high pressure. So we'll go ahead and we'll animate this, and then I'll show you step by step a couple of the different patterns we're going to wind up in here over the next 10 to 14 days across the prairie. So you see the animation here. We continue to move along. The pattern is not blocked or anything like that. We'll look at, for the next 5 to 7 days, really being something like this, that ridge to the west, the ridge to the east, the trough to the west. That puts us in this kind of transition period here where we see disturbances tracking across the prairie over the next 5 to 7 days. By the time we get to the late part of the week, here is the more impactful storm that scoots just south of the prairie, leaving the prairie on the north side of that storm track with an opportunity to pick up some accumulating snow from that. And then as we head into early next week and even deeper into next week, we go into a pattern now where we've got ridging once again over Western Canada, such that troughing in the east will again give us this northwest flow across the prairie. So this puts us back into a relatively dry pattern. It's going to be a colder pattern, but as we take a look at temperatures here, there's not a lot in the way of really, really cold air off to the north. So even as we get into next week and we start to take that jet stream trajectory, doing something like this, tapping into the Arctic before we bring it back down to the prairie, how much cold air is actually available up there is a bit of a question mark and not something I'm really sold on at this point. So trending cooler, but I'm not ready to call it something like we saw mid-January with extremely cold air settling into the region. So getting started on Monday, again, we see that snow across northern portions of the prairie with a wintry mix across the Saskatchewan and Manitoba border. We'll animate this over the next 7 days, and here's what you got. So the first storm lifts out of the region for the overnight into the day on Tuesday. High pressure keeps us pretty quiet through the middle part of the week. This is Tuesday, Wednesday. It's late Wednesday into Thursday that we see that area of low pressure tracking south of the U.S.-Canada border with a corridor of snow expected, primarily in southern portions of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. I really should draw my snow accumulation corridor, something like that. And again, much of this falling late Wednesday Wednesday into the day on Thursday, and then Friday it pulls away from Manitoba. High pressure starts to build back into the region, and that is when we get back into a pattern next week where I expect to see at least some clippers kind of diving across the region, but with probably flurries, not so much in the way of heavy accumulating snow. So this is what you got, the European on the left, GFS on the right, both of which showing, the opportunity to pick up quite a bit of snow here. I would not lock into these amounts here with the 10-to-1 accumulation. There's going to be a bit of melting here. I don't think we'll have exactly 10-to-1 ratios. I think certainly 4 to 8 inches of snow, where you see the blue and the purple shading showing up there, maybe some locally higher amounts there, and we'll watch this as it comes a little bit closer. Stay tuned to your local forecast here as we get a little bit closer to the event. One way to kind of look at this, the probability of 6 inches or more of total snow between now and Saturday night. So this would include that Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday snowfall. As we get down here across portions of southern Saskatchewan into southern Manitoba, that's where we see the most likely chance start getting into that better than 50% realm of 6 inches or more of snow. So really, far southeastern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, southern and southwestern portions of Manitoba on the lookout Wednesday through Friday for, maybe a half a foot of snow or something like that. Now, here's where we look at those temperatures. Again, mild to get the week start, mild as we head through much of the weekend into early next week, even as we transition into this pattern here that brings the flow out of the northwest. Not a lot in the way of cold air building across this region to deliver to the prairie. So we will certainly trend colder next week, but not bitterly cold, not dangerously cold. So here's a look at your next 10 days in Calgary. Really going to kind of prove me wrong here. Calgary, you're already colder right now, so you stay pretty steady. You'll see the temperature fluctuations here as we move east a little bit more. Edmonton, you're already trending a bit colder, so you keep it pretty steady over the next 10 days. Here in Saskatoon, a little further east, this is where we'll start to see that slight cool down as we head into next week. Again, look, it's pretty typical here for a colder pattern in early February. It's certainly not something that's going to be breaking any records or anything like that. See the slightly cooler look here in Regina as we head into next week, and then a bit more dramatic here in Winnipeg. You stay on the mild side over the next 4 days, trending cooler over the weekend into early next week. I will talk to you again a week from today. Here's what you got this week. A little ramp up in the precipitation opportunities, trending colder but probably drier next week.